After a few years in the wilderness, the noble fighting game is at full strength once again. Tekken, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat are all in rude health, and Soul Calibur is set to make a full return this year. But that poses another problem. With so many fighting games about, which are the best ones to try? Well, that's where this list comes in. We've rounded up 10 of the best beat-em-ups available on PC, with something for every level of ability. Irrespective of your personal taste, if you're a fan of connecting fists with faces, there's something for you on this list. Lace up your gloves, bow to your sensei, and enjoy the 10 best fighting games on PC. Tekken has always been about intergenerational family drama as well as punching throats, so it's fitting that the 7th entry feels so grand and theatrical. It retains the graceful ebb and flow combat of the earlier titles, with immaculate hitboxing and satisfying combos, and it spices things up with cinematic slowdown and powerful rage arts. And most importantly of all, it still feels like Tekken. At its heart, Tekken 7 is still a game you play for hours with the same character you've been using since the 90s, just because every impact still feels impressive and every match is exhilarating. And while the story mode might be all frowns, murder and betrayal, it never takes itself too seriously. It's an engaging and immaculately polished tale of patricide and pandas, and the best Tekken game since number 3. In contrast, Nidhogg is the anti-Tekken. Instead of a cast of wildly different characters with bottomlessly deep movesets, this is a fighting game with 2 characters who have the same skills. And despite this, it still has the same tension and tactics as the very best fighters. It's played at a frantic pace as you try to predict what your opponent will do and outsmart them, leaving your path free to sprint into the maw of the titular Nidhogg. Every little encounter is a story of its own, and pulling a victory back from the jaws of defeat is one of the most satisfying things you can do in any game. Although strictly speaking, we should be talking about the jaws of victory, considering how each match ends. Nom nom nom. Most fighting games have a story which is like an after-dinner mint. You're not going to complain about getting it, but it's not why you came to the restaurant. In contrast, the story mode in Injustice 2 is a slap-up feast, better than many comics and probably better than the films. It helps that the facial animation in the game is beyond uncanny, making Injustice 2's mad cast of clowns, monsters and aliens feel raw and relatable. The great work NetherRealm started in the excellent Mortal Kombat 10 is continued here, but it's refined, improved and revised for a different audience. And it's a cracking fighter too. Less technical than Tekken or Street Fighter, but certainly no less enjoyable. Plus, if you get tired of standard fights, the Destiny-style gear grind and endless multiverses, all full of inventive match modifiers, will keep you playing for months. If you want a fighting game you can play with your mum, your kids or anyone with opposable thumbs, Gang Beasts is just the thing. Mainly because nobody, no matter how skilled, truly understands what's going to happen, and that's exactly what makes it brilliant. It's a push and pull free-for-all that rarely makes sense, and it's all the better for it. The physics-based scrapping results in some bizarre, amusing and sometimes unfair results, which puts everyone on a level playing field. It's also the best fighting game to play with a group of friends, because if seeing bouncy, aggressive jelly babies throw each other off buildings isn't a great way to spend time with your buddies, then you've been going to the wrong parties. Skullgirls is the embodiment of a genre that endures through the unyielding love of its players. The creation of fighting game enthusiast Mike Zymont and artist Alex Ahad, Skullgirls is like a crowd-funded fairy tale, albeit one with sinister, often salacious characters. But it isn't the impressive origin story that puts Skullgirls on this list. It's the fact that it's a sharp, entertaining, beautifully animated brawler with an absolutely massive cast of fighters. It's also a record holder, recognised in 2013 for having the most frames of animation per character, averaging 1,439 frames per fighter. Skullgirls may not have got the critical acclaim it deserved on release, but it remains a firm favourite among the thriving community that helped to create it.
Tell me where it hurts.
If you don't already have it, stop what you're doing and start downloading Killer Instinct now. It's free, it's brilliant, and there's really no reason not to grab it. It's a fine example of free-to-play done right. You can pick up the basic package from the Windows Store and only pay for the characters you want, or you can grab the whole thing from Steam because it's worth it. Killer Instinct is the kind of scrapper you design in your school notebook when you were 7 years old, with a murky cast of werewolves, mummies, and cursed swordswomen, and it feels brilliant to play. accessible to newcomers and deep enough for the hardcore. 24 years on from the original Super Nintendo release, and those smooth, powerful combos are just as pleasing as ever. Remember what we were saying about Nidhogg being simple? Well, Divekick makes Nidhogg look like Virtua Fighter. But this isn't a joke entry. Yes, it's weird and funny, and yes, it literally only uses 2 buttons. There aren't even any directional inputs. But despite that, it's a surprisingly tense and tactical affair. The soul of every fighting game is here, but it's unobscured by complicated inputs. You still watch what your opponent does and try to outsmart them. You'll still need to think. Play it with another friend who loves beat-em-ups, and you'll soon forget why you ever needed the other 6 buttons. Instead, you'll be locked in a battle of wills, entirely consumed by the desire to kick your best friend in the head. Let's follow the simplest game on the list with the most complicated, Guilty Gear Xrd. In fact, even working out which version of Xrd to get is tough, but we're going for the second sequel, Revelator. And there are 2 versions of that as well. Look, they're all great, okay? What makes them so good? Well, apart from the staggeringly deep fighting systems, this is simply one of the snazziest games you'll see on PC. A genuine piece of art running at an angelic 60 frames per second. There's a level of craft here that makes every move hypnotic, and it's worth giving this a try even if you don't have the slightest idea what the hell's going on. If you're going to take the next step into more complicated fighting games, your eyes will thank you for trying Guilty Gear Xrd. Most of the games on this list have been standard 1v1 affairs, so it makes sense to include a Super Smash Bros. Clone. Especially as in the case of Rivals of the Aether, it's a really flipping good one. Like Smash, it looks deceptively chaotic, as if nobody who's playing really knows what's going on. The object being to knock your opponent off the stage rather than beat them to a pulp. And underneath the frantic gameplay and adorable cartoon animals, it's a deep, engaging fighter. Rivals of Aether deserves your love for allowing PC gamers to experience classic Smash Bros. Gameplay without having to shell out for a new console. It's not a fighting game list without a Street Fighter entry, and 5 gets the nod for being the most vibrant and popular entry currently available. It might lack the weight and artistry of Street Fighter 4, we'll always miss those gorgeous ink splots, but the 5th numbered release in Capcom's venerable fighting franchise is deep, challenging, and wholly compelling. If you're going to learn Street Fighter, 5 is the place to start. Cross-platform play means the community is packed with other players, and simpler, revised systems means you can feel competent without spending months reading about frame data. In fact, Ryu in Street Fighter 5 is a walking tutorial for how a proper 2.5D fighting game should play. You'll know your meaties from your mix-ups in no time. After a shaky start, Street Fighter V now feels like the total package. The story mode still can't compare to the likes of Injustice 2 or Mortal Kombat 10, but the fighting is simply incredible. And that, after all, is why we're here. So there you have it, the 10 best fighting games on PC. Were we wrong to miss off Melty Blood? Should Mortal Kombat 10 have made the cut? Let us know in the comments below. Please like this video if we got any of the entries right, and subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly features.